As I am unable to interview Erin Gruwell, teacher and advocate for tolerance, I took some of her own words from her TED Talk, Becoming a Catalyst for Change, her memoir, Teach with Your Heart, and a novel she co-wrote with her students, The Freedom Writer's Diary, to share with you a little about her life. Erin Gruwell is a teacher, writer, and founder of the Freedom Writers Foundation, a foundation created to help teach teachers how to build classrooms of acceptance and tolerance with innovative lesson plans and life lessons. Gruwell speaks at corporate events, leadership trainings, and community meetings. She has worked with Girl Scouts of America, TED Ed, and the International Forum for Child Welfare. Erin's educational philosophy valued and promoted diversity and an unwavering tolerance for differences among not only the teenagers in her classroom, but all humans. She encouraged them to rethink stereotypes and beliefs about themselves and others, stand up against prejudice, and help correct misunderstandings among people. Gruwell and her students truly represent cosmopolitanism on the ground. They are examples of what real-life experiences as cosmopolitan people look like. In the classroom, Erin taught her students how to be accepting, understanding, embracing of diversity, but also to remember their roots, their local community, their families, their people. She used examples of people throughout history who were united by oppression and hope for change, but who also came from diverse cultures, religions, and backgrounds. In her memoir, Teach with Your Heart, Gruwell discusses her admiration for her father. My dad used to share stories about seeing segregation firsthand. He was drafted to play minor league baseball for the Washington Senators and said he judged a batter by his swing, not the color of his skin. In her inspirational speech, Becoming a Catalyst for Change, Erin reflects on the moment that she wanted to become a teacher to impact high needs and struggling students. I saw this man standing in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square on TV, and as I fixated on that moment, I realized that I wanted to stand up for something. She continues to reflect on her own differences from her students that she noticed on the first day of classes. We were living in a gated community growing up. My father was driving a Mercedes, but I had students who just came from juvenile hall, had an ankle monitor around their leg, and a probation officer. Students who bounced around from foster home to group home to shelter. She continues, so I decided that we were going to play a game that was anything but a game, and I simply put this piece of tape down the center of the floor and asked my students questions. And as my students would stand on that line, I would know where they stood. I knew their story, and so I tried to think, how can I teach my students that they have a story? Erin not only wanted to hear their stories, but she wanted others to hear their stories and show the world the way these students lived so that they could be better understood. After all, the more we are exposed to other stories and cultures, the easier it is to understand and accept them for who they are. It was important for Erin to show her students that they all understood human emotions. In the Freedom Writer's Diary, she says, even though they were looking at their mortal enemy, they realized, we are much more similar than we are different. We all hunger, we all want, we all wish, and we all dare to dream. She is famously quoted saying, no matter what race we are, what ethnic background, sexual orientation, or what views we may have, we are all human. Unfortunately, not all humans see it that way. When she spoke at the LEAD conference in Nashville in 2015, Erin explained how she fostered the students' pride in their backgrounds, but encouraged them to go out and explore the new ideas, new opportunities, new ways of thinking. And while they didn't have to adopt them, many students chose to see education and life in a different way. She tells the audience, they couldn't change the cast of characters that they were dealt, but they could have a toast for change. In that moment of vulnerability, it gave every other kid an opportunity to dare to dream. Bosnian refugees came to our classroom and looked at my students, she said. They could care less about the color of their skin, the side of the street they came from, or more importantly, what their parents did or didn't do. And one day, my students said, we keep sending these letters out into the world and all of these icons come and share their world with us. It's time that we take our world out there. Erin encouraged them to take their words and their story out into the world. She wanted to make sure that her students embraced the possibility of spreading awareness, understanding, and tolerance of others' differences. In her memoir, she writes, "If the Freedom Riders could ride buses to fight injustice, why couldn't we call ourselves the Freedom Riders and write to fight injustice too?" The idea seemed to gestate and take real form. The students loved the idea of having a name that gave them an identity they could be proud of. After we ruminated on the name for a few days, Darius recommended that if the Freedom Riders started their journey in Washington, D.C. to grab people's attention, why don't we go to Washington, D.C. too? This was only the beginning. Erin led the Freedom Riders in a candlelight vigil around the Washington Monument to honor all those who were killed as a result of persecution. They visited the Lincoln Memorial, discussing Martin Luther King's call for unity and respect among all humans, and finally returned with Mrs. G in college to share their story with Congress and meet Congressman John Lewis, an original Freedom Rider. Erin's mission as a teacher, activist, ally, and advocate for change was to accept people where they were and open their minds to others' ideas and cultures in a spirit of tolerance. She is a true cosmopolitan. I'll leave you with a final quote from the Freedom Rider's diary. "And so the journey continues," she says. "After all of our experiences over the last 10 years, the greatest lesson the Freedom Riders and I have learned is to validate that everyone has a story. Our hope is that everyone who picks up our book, hears us speak in an auditorium, or even watches our film realizes that they too have a story, and that story needs to be shared." Erin Gruwell will be speaking at the LEAD conference the weekend of February 3rd, 2017 in Washington, D.C.